Perfect. Okay, well, there we have it. Oh, it looks like I can see those too. And so, John, I'll let you welcome everybody tonight, and then we'll get started.
Okay, so good morning, good evening, everybody. John McCauley, Mayor of Mill Valley. So first thing Kendall said to me when I came on to the meeting was, hey, be quiet. No comments from council members. So as we move into breakout rooms, we'll all be there listening, but our job is to listen and not to provide commentary at this point. Part of it has to do with the Brown Act. It's wonderful that so many people are interested in this topic. I understand there's been over 1,000 people who've completed surveys in connection with the housing element. I had a fair number of comments at the beginning of the last council meeting. I would encourage you to take a quick look at to kind of give you the sense of where I am at on this. There is no option. This is something that we must do, and we just have to figure out how to do it the best way we can for our city. In a broader sense, if you find things that are troubling, I will let you know that there is a state proposition initiative process that has started. There will be a signature gathering this Saturday, February 19th, between 11 and 1 p.m. at the Mill Valley Town Square. So if you're so moved to think what's going on here, how can you allocate this many units, 865 to a town which is in a high fire risk zone, you can use that method to share your voice. But that's not really the topic of tonight. Tonight is a topic of how we specifically respond to the requirements that have been given to us. And with that, I will turn things over to Kendall. And once again, thank you all for spending time with us tonight.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. And again, yes, we know that everybody is really busy, and this is a really important project for the city. And it's really not only a necessary one, but one that will really shape the development of the community for time to come. So just I'm going to go over some very brief remarks about how this is set up. And first of all, the purpose of the housing element. This is a required element. It's one of several that go as part of the city's general plan. And basically, every 8 years, it has to be updated to reflect changes in the community, changes in the surrounding areas, and basically figure out exactly how we're going to accommodate the future growth and the future residents that are going to come here. The general plan goals has two basic things, which is really to protect and enhance the natural beauty of Mill Valley and protect its character, but also to encourage diversity of housing, income levels, and lifestyles in the community. We know a number of folks have lived here for decades and have seen the changes that have happened over time. So what we really want to do is make sure that as the community evolves, that we continue to preserve the information that is here and whatnot. So another part of the general plan goal, which also we did a survey at the beginning, really matches some of the things that the community told us, which is they really want to continue to encourage diversity, make sure that we're taking into account special populations like our seniors, disabled folks, really support the idea of accessory dwelling units. Some of you may have heard of those as granny flats or second units on a home. Multifamily housing, multifamily ownership, single family ownership. There's all kinds of things that people are talking about, and these are all basically tools within the box that we use to address housing. So even though we're doing the element now, and this is again every 8 years, the city of Mill Valley has been active in trying to address housing all the time. So we're looking at obviously protecting the existing housing, making sure that that works, enhancing and preserving the stock that we have, but looking to get more units, and where will those units go? And also, which we'll talk about in a minute, trying to figure out ways to house our workforce, because so many people that come to Mill Valley and work in Mill Valley are coming in from outside the community. Now, I know this is a big scary number, and I know people don't like it, or some people don't like it, but this is a number that the state has assigned to Mill Valley, which is 865 units. That is substantially larger than the cycle we were in previously 8 years ago. And so you see, this is kind of the distribution. Very low income, we need to have 262 units. So when you see these things that talk about AMI, that's average median income. And the average median income in Mill Valley is high as compared to other areas in the Bay Area. So it really is a huge challenge for those that are not affluent to be able to get into housing, and not only affordable, but something we call attainable housing. So being able to find something that you can actually afford to get that doesn't take all of your money is rather important for a lot of folks as we're looking at these pieces. So about 72%, I mentioned, of our workforce comes in from other places, and that contributes to traffic and other issues that we have. We've also got an aging population, which means as more people are aging in the community. We're seeing fewer families and fewer people with kids. And that also has a direct correlation to affordability. So we want to make sure also that we're addressing diversity. There's several groups that have formed recently that really want to make racial equity and diversity a champion thing within this community. And from what we've heard from the residents and from the community at large, that is a value and vision that is shared by most people. So right now we're in this phase 3 of basically looking at scenarios. And when we say scenarios, these are sort of approaches to what the city could consider in order to be able to meet those numbers. And that's really the purpose of tonight's meeting. We've identified some ways that we can get there. Veronica Tam is with us tonight, and she's been working very closely with staff and with our community groups. We're saying, okay, what are some of the options on the table? And so tonight we're going to be asking you about which kinds of things you would be willing to embrace. And if not, what are some of the barriers to those, so we can kind of figure out what kind of policies and programs we can present. And then next go round, we're basically going to present those for discussion on a March 22nd meeting. It'll be a joint meeting between the Planning Commission and the City Council specific to housing. And then we'll come back with this group. Hopefully all of you will come back again because you had so much fun on March 30th and review those again. Then we go through the rest of the process, which is basically submitting the environmental review and other pieces to our friends at the state so it can process through. So site analysis, what can we count? We can count when we're looking at that 800 number, right? Anticipated and pending units. These are approved units, which building permits would be happening after July 1st, and pipeline projects. So things like, One Hamilton, other things that are out there, those can be part of the count. We can also count based on trends that we've seen in the city for those folks that want to put in accessory dwelling units. And then we can also look at underutilized parcels. And that's really what we're going to be talking about tonight, is some of those places where there may be property that's for sale. It may be property that doesn't need to have the same use today or in 10 years from now that it has today. And it may also look at some of the commercial properties or privately owned properties by schools and churches that they may not need them for that purpose anymore. And there might be an opportunity to turn that into a site. So one thing I want to just reiterate, that the housing element is a planning document that basically outlines a development code for different types of building within the city. The city of Mill Valley is not building the housing, so they are not responsible for actually building the units. They are responsible for providing adequate zoning so that if a third party, say MidPenn or a nonprofit, wants to come in and build affordable housing, there's adequate land to do so. It also applies to the private development community. If someone comes in and says, I want to build, X number of apartments and X number of those are going to be affordable, we just have to be within that thing. It does not terminate existing uses. And this is really important when we talk about things like the churches and schools and businesses. It in no way retroactively goes in and says you can no longer use this property for this use. It's set up so that if a property owner says, hey, I've had this forever, it's not really something I want to do anymore, I want to do something different with it, that's the kind of thing we're looking for, is basically a partnership among property owners and the development code to match up. And that's one of the reasons it's challenging, because a lot of the folks we have are really small parcels that maybe aren't connected. So it's a lot easier when you have big chunks of land that you can do at the same time. But I think if anybody lives in Mill Valley, there really aren't very many of those sort of big chunks that aren't constrained by either environmental issues or anything else. So at this point, all the things that the city has in the pipeline is about 460 units, which means those are things that we've already got in place that will help meet this goal. So we've got this shortfall of 405 units. And then we also need a buffer. And this is a requirement of the state. And it's basically, you want to have more than you actually are required to have, again, more in terms of the zoning, so that if something isn't built or doesn't come through, there's an ability to absorb the need through other means. So you've got to have, again, not only the whole piece, but also a buffer. So tonight's workshop, we're going to talk about some of these areas where we found places that could accommodate this type of growth and could accommodate these type of housing. And then we're going to ask you to share your ideas on that as they go through. Now, many of you, I think, have already participated in one of our online surveys. I think the mayor mentioned we had almost 1,000 people, and many of you have probably seen us out at the farmers market or at other folks. We've been to the school board. This community is actively engaged in this process, so it's not going to be for lack of feedback that we know. I just wanted to share with you some of the preliminary results. And I know some folks have asked about this. We will be publishing the entire results along with what we call crosstabs. So you'll be able to see how these answers size up in terms of how long someone has lived there, if they're renting or if they own a home, all kinds of other things. So what we found, and you see the green dashes here, overwhelming support for encouraging mixed use. So that, for example, would be perhaps in the downtown area where you have either a restaurant, retail on one level, possibly offices, and then you might have living accommodations that go on top of that. So it's basically combining uses in one geographic chunk. Everybody wants to see opportunities for younger generations. They want to see more families and young children and people in the community. So that was really good. We also see overwhelming support for fair housing, which means we're not, as a community, it's important to you not to be discriminatory or exclusionary in terms of the people that you have in. And then no surprise, obviously limiting growth in environmentally constrained areas. And in Mill Valley, that means housing or anything on development that would be close to sensitive habitats, or that would be possibly endangered through either fire or other natural impacts in an area. So we want to make sure that we're limiting that kind of growth. One of the things that came up, obviously, was looking at rezoning possibly faith-based institutions. And I want to make it very clear, this is not talking about kicking the churches out of town. It's saying if the church perhaps had land that it wasn't using or wanted to co-use with another use, that we could look at it in that way. Also more incentives for those that want to put second units on their properties. And then looking at support for large commercial lots that are perhaps not performing as well in commercial, that might be converted over to residential uses as time goes on. And then we're also talking about, kind of with that mixed use, converting upper floors of offices into apartments, condos, other types of things that might be used. So a lot of the common themes here, affordable housing, attainable housing, everybody understands that this is really a big problem and something that we need to be working on together collectively. There's interest, of course, in having diversity, and then also, of course, making sure that we've got workforce housing, because I think a lot of folks have mentioned that, you know, as we have people that are coming in, that might be our teachers or people that are working in local medical facilities or any of that kind of stuff. We want to have them be able to live in town where they work. And that, of course, helps us reduce traffic and impacts. There's also interest from locally owned commercial properties to switch over. But one of the challenges, of course, is matching them up so that we have big enough chunks of land that it can be impactful and do something for us. It's positive. And then also looking at our existing development standards, which is making sure that if we do want to have more things in a particular area, that there are constraints for things that are aesthetically pleasing or that are keeping the community character of Mill Valley as things move forward. So tonight's discussion, we're really going to be focusing on the larger sites. These are a half acre or more, and there aren't very many of them. In fact, there's only about 50 citywide, and non-vacant parcels also have to be shown as that they really have a chance of converting over. So the state is being a little bit more persnickety than they were a few cycles back. So that's something we have to pay attention to. And then lot consolidation for multiple parcels with same ownership. That'd be like Edgar's and Jolly King. So that if we have a way to combine the properties, if we've got a co-property owner or a sole property owner, that makes them a little easier. One of the things we're also looking at is commercial areas and where these things would be. This was a ranking piece. And really what it was basically saying is with 1 being best and 5 being least advantageous, where are some things you'd like to see? And East Blythedale went to the top, downtown, another part of East Blythedale, Miller, and then Miller Gateway, and then 101 Redwood Highway was kind of the last choice of these 5 in the way that they were ranked by people that were participating. And we're going to talk a little bit about those and ask you for your feedback on that again during these breakout sessions. So what are the top properties? I'm going to actually turn this over to Danielle to kind of go over some of these major things here. And Danielle, I'm going to virtually tag team you.
Okay, thank you. So just as perspective, thank you for all your input. Listed on this slide are some examples of commercial areas and sites identified as part of the online survey. You'll be talking about that tonight a little more. Just so there's some understanding, the sites analysis is and the inventory is an iterative process. And the first step is doing what we're doing, identifying possible pieces of land to accommodate this housing. Unfortunately, there's also very specific requirements of how and when a parcel can really be put on this site's inventory. So city staff and the consultants are helping us evaluate the sites based on basically their site conditions, as well as if there's enough land or capacity, as we call it, to add housing. And since the land, most of it isn't vacant, as we all know in Mill Valley, the general assumption is that the housing would be incorporated using parking lots, converting space, or additional stories on buildings. As a reminder, this is not demolishing buildings or changing the existing use on properties, but trying to figure out how we can accommodate and make room for additional housing on our land, which is all pretty much non-vacant land that is already being utilized. Next slide. So as part of that, we also have to show that there's substantial evidence that there's a realistic opportunity for development to possibly occur. Doesn't have to occur, but there has to be some sort of evidence that there might be this ability, especially for the larger parcels we're talking about, to develop. So we've gone through some preliminary analysis, and there are some sites that aren't going to qualify as part of the sites inventory list. And the reason I'm showing you this is that, one, I wish it wasn't as complicated, but it is a complicated process. And not only that, we don't have a lot of sites, so we really have to work together as a community to work on how we are going to accommodate our regional housing needs and think about the future of Mill Valley, of how we would like to accommodate our future generations and our housing needs, not just because the state's telling us to, but because we should be thinking about the future and how we're going to accommodate those needs. So a few just notes as you're thinking about these ideas as you're in the breakout room. 500 Miller, also known as the Wall, on Miller Avenue, and 575 East Blythedale, the one vacant lot we have in a commercial area, those are part of that circle, the green circle. So that green circle includes those items. Land outside the city cannot be used, like Strawberry or Tam Junction. We have to look inside our own city boundaries. Larger sites like CVS and Safeway, the Alto Shopping Center, those are owned by corporate landowners. They have long-term leases on the property, and it's likely we will not be able to use those. Open space such as a golf course, tennis course, and Horse Hill, those are open space, and they have not been prioritized or indicated as part of policy by Mill Valley or the County of Marin for housing. And lastly, you'll see the schools and churches, and they're in gray. We're still analyzing those. That's an important first step, and you'll talk about tonight, is just looking at rezoning those potential properties to allow this idea of co-locating housing, teacher housing, or housing for faith-based institutions to further their missions. So with that, I will turn it over to Kendall again.
Thank you. So again, we really want to spend as much time tonight hearing from you as possible. So I know that's a lot of information that we just kind of went through. I'm going to set up our discussions tonight, but we're setting aside a 75-minute group discussion. You're going to break into 7 rooms like magic. And I'm going to push a button and then I'm just going to pray. So it's going to work. It's going to be fine. But in each session, there will be a facilitator and there'll be somebody taking notes. And just so everybody knows, we're going to take notes and publish those, so you'll be able to hear or see what everybody else said in their sessions. So you'll be able to compare notes, and you will also be able to, again, look at the survey information. You will not be able to move from room to room. So once you're in a room, you're in a room. Mentioned this before, but just to reiterate, it's a random selection. So you're just going to randomly be with, it looks like probably 10 or 12 people per group. And again, we wanted to make it small enough so we could have a really meaningful discussion. We're going to talk about 3 topics, which I'm going to walk you through right now. We're going to allow about 20 minutes for each one. And based on the number of folks we have tonight, I mean, we were expecting, actually, we had quite a few more people that registered but haven't signed on yet. But nonetheless, you will be able to share your ideas with the facilitator, and then try to keep your comments, a minute and a half, to make sure that we can hear from everybody and get through as many of these topics as possible. Then we'll have a 15-minute period of time where you can also bring up other topics that relate to the housing element update that you'd like to make sure that the team knows about. And again, we encourage you all to be respectful and be, realize that we're in a group of people that may or may not all have the same opinion tonight at the same time. If you do hear someone's comment and you think it's a really great one, I think most of you by now have been on Zoom enough times to know how to raise your hand or clap or go, yay. So the more that you can allow people to get new ideas out or say, I support that, but not repeat the same thing, that'll allow us to get through more pieces. So I want to walk you through these 3 pieces that we're going to be talking about. The first 20 minutes, this is called adaptive reuse, which is a fancy name for basically what we talked about earlier, which is that concept of mixed use. So for example, in the downtown area, you might take a unit that has a restaurant on the bottom, and you might put housing on top of it or offices on top, and then housing on top of that. So it's really looking at smaller units, usually about 1,000 square foot or less. And there are some challenges with that. So some of the issues that might be looked at is, well, what do we do about parking? So normally when you have sort of a downtownish mixed use, you might have fewer parking places that are required per unit. And you might also talk about, are there incentives to do that? So that if a property owner says, well, maybe we can give them a break on fees or other things to make it more pencil out better for types of things that they may want to do, which means you might be able to get more units out of it in order for that to happen. So we're going to ask you to spend about 20 minutes on that, talking about adaptive reuse. The second topic really relates to rezoning schools and churches. And just to reiterate again, this is not changing the use without the express support of either the school or the church. So as an example, my parents' church in Southern California, they had a large sort of parkish area. And so we kind of call this co-location. So they took some of that property and they turned it into housing, and they used that for the rectory, and they used that also for other folks that were working with the church. So there were opportunities to have that happen. So definitely it's a partnership on that. And that is kind of how that goes. So the idea here again is this is a partnership. And so we want to make sure that that happens is a balance, right? And same thing with the school. They may have properties that they're not using or underutilized, and they would like to sell them or do something else with them, and they can be converted to housing. We just had a chat question asking about, will there be breakout sessions? Yes, in fact, you're just in time, because we're going to be doing that in just a moment, and breaking you into the smaller groups. So that will be kind of the next thing of attack there, because we do have some folks that are still coming in. So the third area is really more allowable units. And so really, I think one of the things that's very interesting is that about 85% of the properties that we're looking at are less than half an acre. And that's about 365 of them. And almost a half of those are less than 6,000 square feet. So one of the things that we're looking at is basically reducing parking and also modifying standards, either for how big or how tall, how wide, all that kind of stuff, to facilitate what a lot of us call the missing middle of units of a certain size. So that's kind of like what happens with, like, let's say you've got a studio apartment and then you got a single family home. There's a big jump between those two things. So these are kind of looking at those sort of, it might be smaller units, townhouses, condos, duplex, triplex, fourplex, whatever, but it's looking to see if there's an opportunity to do that. You may have heard some of this recently. The city of Woodside is going to do some of this with what's called SB 9, which allows for, subdividing smaller homes into 2. Other communities like Berkeley have completely repealed single family housing. So we're not suggesting that that happens here. We're just saying that in some cases with these particular types of properties, is that a discussion that people want to have to allow, again, for maybe it's a 3-plex or a 6-plex to accommodate more people. And so again, with these sort of things, are there ways that we can incentivize those? Are there ways that we can reduce parking requirements or other things that go along with that, and also potentially reduce fees that are paid for the city. And then that's, all good from there. And Jill Benton, no worries. We're going to have this meeting is going to be recorded and we're going to share this information out. So I appreciate the fact that you were able to join us at all, but you will be able to participate later, either by email or on the website. So just again, this is a really broad look at sort of the division of these different pieces that we have right now, less than 6,000 square foot, more than 6,000. And then we see the very smaller numbers that are half acre and over an acre. And you'll see on multifamily, we don't have any multifamily that is over an acre and only a very small percentage that's half. So again, we're really kind of constrained by what we have. We want to know from you tonight as well, are there other locations or other things that we might consider? We want to think creatively. So for the purposes of tonight's discussion, we want to make sure that, all things are discussed and on the table. So we're really, really listening to that. I'm seeing a note here about the Mill Valley Golf Course. That's a great thing to bring up during your session when you are in your breakout. So yes, please feel free to share that. So I'm going to remind everybody, this is going to be about 75 minutes. When you move to your breakout rooms, you'll be able to see other folks there. And, oh, sorry, wrong one. I'm going to stop my share for just a moment here because I have to do the breakout room. So what we're going to do is ask the facilitators to, again, come up with each of those 7 things. You're going to have time in order to talk about 20 minutes for each one. And then we'll be sending you opportunities to, wrap your conversation up, and then you will automatically be brought back into this session when we're ready to go. As I mentioned earlier, there are council members that are going to be listening in these sessions today, but they are not going to be actively participating. So don't think they're ignoring you or not wanting to play. We just want to be very careful about making sure that there's no issues with those things. So I'm going to open all these rooms up and like through the Zoom magic, you're going to magically appear, and then I'll see you all back here in about an hour and 15 minutes. So
Kendall,
this works. Yes.
are the facilitators supposed to click breakout room and put the number in?
Yes.
Okay, so all the facilitators, if you could put the number in, and then
And I'm looking the way this did, it actually is set, I have 7, but I'm not seeing. Oh, there it did. Okay. All right. We are ready to go. So facilitators, you will select your rooms as we discussed earlier, and that is the same for the council members. I'm opening all rooms now. And you have been invited to your breakout rooms. So we'll see you back here in about 75 minutes.
welcome back.
Welcome back, everybody. Considering all the things that could have gone wonky tonight, if that's the least of them, I am so happy right now. But you can hear me now, correct? Yes. Okay.
Yes,
So again,
yes.
I really want to thank everybody that took the time to be with us tonight. I know that the U.S. women are playing their hockey match, and there's all kinds of other things that take our attention. And on behalf of the city of Mill Valley, Danielle, Patrick, and everyone at the council, we just really appreciate the time that you took to share your views with us tonight. So as I mentioned previously, a couple things are going to happen. We're going to post this meeting to the website so that people will be able to see it at a later date and watch it at their leisure. We will also be posting notes from each of the breakout rooms. We had anywhere between 8 and 12 people per room, so it was a good turnout. We're very happy about that. We will also be publishing the survey results, and we expect to have that done probably by the end of next week. The survey actually closes on Sunday, February 20th. So if you haven't already taken it or you want to have others participate, please let them do that. You can get that to the link, right from the link from the city's website. So again, March 22nd, we'll have that joint city council and planning commission meeting. And then on March 4th, we'll have our final virtual public workshop. I don't know, by then we might even be able to be in person, although I think we've had better participation online. But at that point, we'll be presenting the draft policies and have those for review. And that will be influenced heavily by all of the outreach we've done at this point, as well, of course, as the input that we're going to receive from the Planning Commission and the City Council. So just as a reminder, we're going to move right over here into that phase 4, which will then take us to making sure that we have a document that, fulfills the guidelines that have been set up by the Housing and Community Development Department for the state of California. And then Veronica Tam will be working very closely with Danielle and city staff to actually develop the housing element. We anticipate that going for a public review in June. And in that timeframe, you'll have adequate time in order to review, make comments, and at the same time, it'll be going through a review process at the state level. And so while this seems to take a long time, we also, of course, will be having an environmental review. That's part of the California Environmental Quality Act. And that'll be looking at what kinds of things might be affected by any types of changes or other things that might need to change based on the zoning requirements that come out of the housing element update. And then the goal, of course, is to have the housing element adopted in January of 2023, both certified by the state and, of course, approved again by the city council. So we're still in the thick of it. We've still got a ways to go, but we're getting closer. And again, this survey is open until February 20th. These links are also available on the cityofmillvalley.org/housing element. My information as well as Danielle's are here. Feel free to call us or to email us any questions or comments that you have. We'd really love for all of you, if you get a moment, to send us your comments or for your what you thought about the meeting tonight. We know this is kind of a weird way to do things. We're all kind of learning, but anyway, we really would love your feedback on how you thought of the meeting and what you thought about the process in general, and any kind of tips you have for how we might be able to improve that later. We are willing and ready to learn and, of course, adapt our approach to make things better. And again, the survey is available in both Spanish and in English, so you're able to share that with other family, friends, and whatnot. And that is really all I have to wrap up tonight before I let everyone go back to their regular lives. Danielle, did you want to say a few words in closing, and then perhaps we'd let the mayor close that out?
Just thank you for your time. Your input is really appreciated. This is a great conversation, and I look forward to the continued collaboration to work together to really balance what we're trying to do of the needs of our needs as a community, as well as trying to meet the housing needs for the region. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Mayor, did you want to close us out tonight?
Yeah, just real briefly, I have to say that I was in one of the breakout rooms and the comments were excellent and they were quite interesting. People were civil, and there were some good ideas that came from the one I was in. I'm sure the others had the same experience. It was great to see so many people tonight, and I'm looking forward to see how this thing progresses. I did make this announcement at the last council meeting. As we're moving forward, I'm going to be finishing my term in June, and I think to continue with a single voice as we move forward, it would make sense for Urban to kind of take the Urban Carmel, another council member who's waving his hand, who was also on Planning Commission with me, to kind of take the lead as we move from the listening stage to the hard work of deliberation. So you can expect that. But with that, thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. And I just want to do a shout out as well for all of the city staff that helped us tonight in terms of facilitation, taking notes, and especially for my team at DKS. I love you all. You guys rock. And I really appreciate you being here tonight with all of us. So I know that Danielle and I are about to do the Uber happy dance and go like, it worked. So we are all super excited. And again, thank you so much for spending the time tonight. Go USA Women. And again, please do send comments. You can put them in the chat. You can send us email, but we really would like to hear your take on the meeting tonight and how you thought it went. So again, thank you all. Have a great evening, and we'll see you again in March.
Thank you, Kendall.
Bye, everybody.
Mhm.